Okay, so Bachelor, we can start. And welcome everyone who came to this presentation today. I will say a couple of words at the beginning. Uh, Sorry if I disturb someone's work. Really, we planned it like this. No one complained when we are planning. So if it's disturbing very much, maybe we can use headsets. Why? Maybe I'll say why I thought to do it like this, not in the rather below. I thought this will be a rather small event without a pizza. I think we should fit in 1 hour. And I also would like to encourage other people to do small events and to do them maybe without that much preparation and just see how it develops. And this particular event should be I thought, part of a series of 3 events. What we will do today, we will talk about game theory, what it is, what does it study at all. We will spend some time on utility or payoff function, or like a notion of utility and payoff, since it's central for the game theory as a whole and basically defines how the agents behave in our games. And we'll talk about solution concepts, another important thing. This is like what you hear about Nash equilibrium, about dominant strategies. This is all about solution concepts. And the other 2 events should be later. I think there will be 2 parts. One of them will be about limits of game theory, when it doesn't work, when do we have problems with it. And one of the particular applications which is very complex is social choice, which is voting. So if you think about so many countries, so many political systems, and all of them, a lot of them have very different ways of voting. Why there are so many, why it's so difficult, why don't we have one voting system which works for everyone? Very interesting question. And a separate event will be probably about auctions. Auctions is also a particular type of a game, which is very interesting also for CRX as a company. Good. So for today, a little bit in more details, what will we do? We will start with game theory with an informal introduction. We'll discuss what it is and see some examples. Then we will make it formal. We will see some definitions and some interesting theoretical results. Then we'll talk about solution concepts. And when we have all these tools, mathematical, we will learn a little bit, play small things. What can we learn about games formally using mathematics? Yes. So from Wikipedia, game theory is about strategic interactions among self-interested agents. So we will analyze this phrase in details. Strategic means we have some actors, agents, and they are intelligent. So they don't just do something, they can think, they can decide, and basically plan their actions. What exactly means agent to be intelligent, we will formalize later. This is very interesting. Interactions means that my result as agent 1 depends not only on my actions, but also on actions of other people, and I have to do something about it. Yes? So normally I have to think about what will other probably do. And self-interested or non-cooperative game theory, this is where each agent is for himself. So important, it doesn't mean that they are evil, they try to hurt other agents, they just don't care about other agents. This is a very general case. There is also cooperative game theory where we allow for agents to communicate, to make agreements, and to pursue some goals together. This is a different topic. It's basically part of the common game theory. And questions here should be clear. And what is interesting is really if you think how broad are the applications of game theory. I have here some examples because the agents, you normally think about person as an agent, but if you think further, it can be companies, it can be organizations like governments, it can be ethnic groups within one country and so on. And as applications, we can talk about typical applications you hear about is financial markets and auctions. Auctions is a game in a sense, but also in the broader sense, if you talk about competition between companies in the market. Or,
well, I specifically brought Bodhi for the Predator Prey games, so he can calculate
for what?
his chances of catching a squirrel.
This is interesting thing. Okay, let's go. So international conflicts, politics is a game. Votings, as I said before, is a game. And Predator-Prey games, if you think about, like there is some environment with, let's say, two types, like predators and prey, and you appear in this world as a new entity. Depends on what others are doing, your behavior will change. Because if there is like only predators, then basically everyone dies. If there is only prey, then you get a lot if you become a first and only predator, but the more predators exist, the more difficult will it be for you to become another predator. Maybe you want to be a prey and hide. Yeah? So this is also, you can see in biology this works as well. And of course, very important, it's your individual decisions in different life situations. Let's start again with first non-formal example. We'll take an IT case. We'll talk about communication in internet. Yes, so we will learn about representation of a game. This is a typical matrix representation of a game, and we'll see a simple example. So how this representation works, I have two players, row player who can choose between rows and column player who can choose between columns. And in each cell, I have results. They both decide simultaneously, so they don't know what the other person will do or the other party. And if the red one decided for column C and this one decided for D, then that means that red one gets -4 and D one gets 0. And they want to get as much as possible, so they try to maximize their number. How does it work now? What situation can we model? We have a communication internet. In internet, we have TCP protocol, and there are only 2 users for simplicity, and we know that our network can be congested. We can have too much communication. There is a standard algorithm, correct implementation for back-off mechanism where it says if I detect that there is a collision, then I wait for some random number and then I try again. Yes. So basically that means if there is too much communication, the system should reduce the amount of packets in the system and make it bearable for everyone. Or I can, as a node, I fully own my computer, of course, I can install a defective system which will ignore this rule and will just reset immediately if there is a problem. So what happens? If everyone uses correct implementation, then we have some delay of 1 millisecond in average, for example. But if, for example, the row player decides to use defective implementation, then basically he ignores this rule and he ensures that he always gets through. Of course, the other side suffers. Yes. So in this case, the red gets 0 delay, the blue one gets 4 delay. Looks nice. Looks like it makes sense for the red player to play defective strategy. But the problem is if both do this, if both use the defective implementation, then the network is badly congested and both of them suffer. This is a simple scenario which you can extend for more players, of course, but it shows what game theory basically is about, to find out what happens in this case. What happens in this case, I have some examples here. So what are the questions which we can ask? We can ask, so from the perspective of the network operator, what will happen? What people will do? Yes. Will the behavior change if we allow these parties to talk before the decision? Yes. If we allow them to communicate. If we introduce different numbers, so if you make it -4, not -4, but -10, not -3, but -15, will it change the behavior? Yes or no? Important thing in our case about network communication, what will happen is this game is repeated a lot of times. So this changes behavior a lot. if it's one-shot game or if we have repetitions, and how the answer will change, or like how my strategy as a red player will change depending on what do I think about blue player, how intelligent he is, if he has enough power to calculate all the variance here, yes or no. So these are all the questions, and game theory, like in this particular case, it will tell you that we will land here, so everyone will do this. If we allow them to communicate before decision, they will still do this. But if we have a repetitive game which repeats like indefinitely or unknown number of times, then we might land here. Yes. So this is basically what we can learn mathematically, which makes a lot of sense. Probably another more like dramatic case of this game, which is exactly the same mathematically, but looks different. This is Prisoner's Dilemma, which is very famous. And this is about it's formulated differently. There are two complices, like two guys who allegedly committed a crime. They sit in the police in different rooms, and they are asked by the police to defect, basically to report on the other guy. If they both keep silent, then they both land for 1 year in prison because they were carried weapons in the car, yes, but nothing more. If one of them commits that they did the crime, the other one not, then the one who commits gets free because he's an important witness, and the other guy lands for 10 years in prison. If both commit the crime, both defect, then basically there is no important witness because there are two witnesses, and they both land for 6 years in prison. And again, if you look at this, let's look at the red player. So 0 is better than -1. -6 is better than -10. Yes, so we want to maximize our payoff, or we want to spend as little years in prison as possible. So we will always choose the D here as a red player. The same way for the blue player, 0 is better than -1, -6 is better than -10. We will always choose D. So we will land here, but if you look at it from the perspective of the crime world, probably it makes sense for us to somehow come here. Yes, and this is why it's dilemma, because it's not clear what is the best solution here. Yes. Okay, so this same scenario, why is it so important? Why it's so often cited? Because it has a lot of practical implementations. For example, if we talk about market of two companies, yes, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, so like oligopoly market with two big companies, of course it will scale for 3 or 4 as well. They can keep the high price and earn a lot, or one company can decide to decrease the price and then basically capture, if the red decreases the price, it captures the whole market. The blue one gets nothing, but if all decrease the price, then they still get the equal share, but they earn much less. Yes, so this is very obvious situation. The same holds for advertisement. You can, if you don't invest in advertisement and your party, like the other company, doesn't invest in advertisement, you share the market. If you advertise, you invest in advertisement, you spend money, you get more market share, but you also spend some money. And if both advertise, then you still share the market, let's say 50-50, but you earn less. The same is with introducing a new product. Yes, so you can still, the whole market can sell the old stuff and share all the money which is available in the market. If you alone introduce the new product, you win. If everyone introduces a new product, you can say, from the customer perspective, customers win, but the companies lose. Yes? Another situation is two villages across the river. This is more into politics. They can build the bridge, or they cooperate, or they can decide to wait and not build the bridge. If they both cooperate and build the bridge, they both profit from it. If one side waits and another builds the bridge, then the party who waits wins, because both sides can use the bridge when it's there, but the only one party will carry the costs for the bridge. Yes. This is basically, this phenomenon describes all problems with infrastructure in a country. So why government has to invest in building railroads, why government has to invest in building roads and so on. Because infrastructure topics, it's like everyone profits, but someone has to build it. If you don't support it on a government level, then it will never happen. Another interesting case, very current about environment, think about choosing a car. If everyone in the city drives a Toyota Aygo, the smallest one, then it's cheap. Yeah, so it's cheap to buy, and if you crash, then it's also not that expensive what you can break there.
But it's this T-shirt.
Well, I know if both of you drive this Toyota Aygo, then it's probably not the case. But if one person drives a Land Cruiser, then yes, then he profits, because in case he hits another Toyota Aygo, he probably suffers 0 losses, but the other guy is really seriously in trouble. So if everyone uses a Toyota Aygo and you are alone driving the Land Cruiser, you are the winner. The problem is if everyone is driving Land Cruiser, then the crash costs more, the car itself costs more, and there is no winner. Yes. The same with global warming and with, okay, it's maybe too politics, but if you are the only person in the city who tries to save the environment, nothing changes for the environment, and probably your quality of living is less than for everyone else. You don't want to move alone. You have to create incentive for everyone to move. And interesting thing to note here is that if you look at this from outside, this is generally difficult. What is the best result? So is this best result or this best results? If you talk about prisoner's dilemma, if you ask police, they will say this is the best result. If you ask criminals, they will say this is the best results. If you look at the market, what we played here, from the government and from the population point of view, this is best results if everyone reduces price. This is competition. This is why the government also has the, how do you call it? Which controls monopolies, yes. This is what government wants to do. But if you ask both companies, they will say this is the optimum. So what is the best result of a game is not really a correct question. You have to do something else, yes? To be able to do something else, we will look now it maybe would get a little bit less interesting or more boring. We will look at some formal definitions. It will not be a lot, I promise. We will just define what is a game, and we will talk about this utility, because this is really something interesting and important. A game is a set of actors. Then each actor can do something. So actor 1 can do A1. So for a red actor, there will be C, and D is his A1. A small a is basically a cell in this matrix. So this is one decision by every player. So if red one decided C and blue one decided D, then they are here, and this is some particular small a. And then utility function, or also called payoff function, it's the synonyms. It's basically a mapping which defines how much every agent earns, and this is this number. So it maps this cell to 10 for red one and 10 to blue one. Yes. This normal form, this matrix form, is the most general form in game theory. There is also another common form which is called tree form, where we can model time. We draw a tree, and the agents move one after each other, but it also can be reduced to, or basically expanded to a matrix form. Interesting question is, so when we are talking, we have three important notions in the game theory, so plays, actions, and payoff. And game theory, the central question of game theory is what will be the result of this game. So what will the actors decide to do, and what will be their payoffs. Plus these other questions which we had before. So how sensitive is it to particular numbers, what other people think about my actions, what I think about actions of other people, and so on. But this is the central question: what will be the result of the game? Other like related topics are mechanism design, which is looks at this the other way around. I want to induce some behavior. So I want, for example, both criminals to report. How do I have to design the game? So what do I do as a police? I promise the guy, if you report now, I change your documents, I move you to another state, no one ever finds out. I design the rules. Yes, from the criminal perspective, you say, so if you get free and if someone ever meets you, you got killed, they also design rules. So because then this 0 in years in prison is reduced to getting killed, and this is much less attractive than even 6 years in prison. Yes. And then auction theory is basically mechanism design applied to a particular type of games where utility is money. It's not always the case, but we can. In many cases, it makes sense to do this. And the social choice is game theory. This is another extreme. It's a case where we cannot compare utility between agents. So if you, especially in politics, it's difficult to say I like one party 5 more than this party, and I cannot compare to Timur's numbers. He will say, but like I like it 10 more than this party, so my voice is twice as important. It doesn't work. It's just you can rank them, and Timur can rank them, but we cannot compare them between us. Yes. Let's look at the utility, and we have to understand some interesting facts about it. We have to understand how powerful this function has to be. So to show you some problems, there is an interesting paradox. Imagine a game, like, for example, I offer a lottery, yes? I'll take a coin and I will toss it, yes? And you get paid. You get paid depending on when a head appears. So if I toss it first time and there is a head, you will get 2 euros. If I toss it tail, head, you will get 8 euros. Yeah? So the longer the series is, the series terminates when I get a head. The longer the series is, the more money you will get. Yeah? So how much will you pay for participating in this lottery? So I invite you, you know you will get at least 2. Yes, so you can safely pay 2 euros. But how much would you pay? So if you would auction, if you allow only one person to participate, how much would you pay? Sergey, how much would you pay?
32.
Hmm?
32. How much? 32. 32.
I mean, interestingly, mathematically, expected payoff is indefinite. It's really like you can safely pay a million, but probably no one will invest more than 1,000 in this case. And this shows that we cannot reduce everything to money, and also this shows us that we have to make our utility function a little bit more complex, and we have to map a distribution to a payoff, not just a state to a payoff. That means that in our case, we will assign to a distribution of states. So with 80% state A, 20% state B, I will get some value, and it can be different from 50% state S, 50% state B. Is this model sufficient? So, for example, to compare any 2 results, we know that, for example, the Gartner quadrant, where the business consultants then map results to 2 axes. So maybe we need more than one number. Maybe we have to map to something more powerful than just one number. And this question was answered in 1944. This is really central result. So one theorem. Hope will not get too complicated. And what is it about? We try to define what does it mean to be rational. So when can we say that all the results of the game theory work? When the agents can do these four things. Yes, we define that an agent is rational if there is a lottery. Lottery is basically, we say, some scenario, there are three possible results. They will be with probability 10, 40, and 50. Yes, so this is a lottery. And agent is rational if this agent satisfies four requirements. First, agent can compare. If you have two lotteries, you can choose which one you like more. Okay, that's obvious. Or it can you also allow to say they are same. We also allow for this. We also say if I like L more than, like less than M and M less than N, then I like L less than N. Also, you can trust that no one should hold. Continuity. Here is a formula, but basically if I have, again, L is less than M less than N, what it says, I can put this M somewhere between. I can point you the number. Is it closer to L or is it closer to N? So I can find the place in this range for this middle variant. The last one, independence of irrelevant alternatives. I have a separate slide for it.
Can I just, what's a V and M?
This is von Neumann-Morgenstern. So this is basically rationality. If you just say rational, it's not that precise. This is rationality as defined by these two guys. Yes. So what is independence of irrelevant alternatives? This is simple. Imagine you have two types of ice, yes, strawberry and vanilla, and you say I like strawberry more. Yes? Then what happens next? There is a sophistication. What can happen? You can say, of course, it can happen, okay, then I'll take pistachio and I like it more than other things. What should not happen is that you say now, okay, I will take vanilla. This would be strange, yes? So this is independence of irrelevant alternatives. Okay, this is because if you like this more than this, if you add something which you don't care about, you still like this more than this. Who agrees? Who doesn't agree? Sergey, you look pessimistic.
I think we all agree, but Georg just said very correctly, take your kids to the ice cream shop and you'll find out.
Yes, but there you see all of them at the same time. Okay. And basically, if these things are given, then we can use with this utility function and use it, and basically all the results of the game theory will work. Yes? I wanted to talk to Sergey. Basically, this is an example by Dan Ariely based on real numbers, where a company tries to, like, they sell subscription to some content online. They propose two things: online access only or online access plus a printed book. Yes, and online costs $60 per month or per year. I don't know, per year probably. Online plus print costs 125, and they get X amount of orders every month, and the distribution is like this. Yes. And what happened is the following. Basically, based on advice by this guy, by Dan Ariely. He's a very interesting guy. He's a professor in Israel and basically does behavioral economics. What they did, they added another position, print only, for 125, same price, yes? And you see the results. So basically it says that this independence of irrelevant alternatives doesn't work. What this guy shows that if you offer something for free, it makes people crazy. This is because you get a lot of offers on internet, postage is for free or something is for free. What the message we should get here? There is a print. It's nice print. It costs money. It's like valuable thing. You can have this, but you can have this plus something for free, online for free. So, And this is why suddenly this 32 became 84 here. Of course, mathematics, all results are only as good as the assumptions or the axioms in this case, and it doesn't mean that the game theory doesn't work at all. This thing works for people in particular cases. They really fall into this something for free a lot. If you talk about companies or governments, then decisions are more rational, then these things doesn't happen that much. But just for you to be aware, this fourth axiom of this theorem is the largest critic point. Good. So having this mathematical formulations, we can now talk about games a little bit more. We can define what are different types of games. So one of them is one of the types is pure competition. This is important type. This is where what one agent wins, the other one loses. Yes, happens a lot. Happens a lot. Where you play with money, it's always that one person earns, another person loses, and so on. If special cases, there are some game where this constant is zero. Yes. Basically, auction would be a zero-sum game in this case. Game of cooperation. It's like another extreme where either everyone loses or everyone wins. And this is again, this is more about how can we help players to coordinate their actions. Also, cooperations between these things is possible. We'll take one example which we will use later also to rationalize and calculate things, and this example is called Battle of Sexes. It's about husband and wife want to go to cinema. They agreed to go to a cinema today at 8 o'clock. Probably it was before the mobile phone. They don't know, they didn't agree which film will they take. Yeah, so there are two films, Battle of Armageddon and Flower Child. Battle of Armageddon is probably some action. Flower Child is probably some, how do you call it, drama, I don't know. And basically both of them, they want to go together. If husband goes to Flower Child and wife goes to Battle of Armageddon, it's 0-0. If they don't meet, then they are not happy, yes? If they meet, then everyone wins at least one because they enjoy the company. And but generally, the husband wants to go to Battle of Armageddon. So if he would be allowed to choose, he earns more here, and the wife gets more there. So this is a game. What should I do as a husband today evening? Yeah, so to maximize, how should I decide?
Say yes.
Yes, she doesn't hear me. I have to make a decision without knowing what she will do. Yes, so this is interesting question.
That is obvious.
Yeah.
What will you do? What would you do?
Buy a card for a Flower Child.
Yeah, but you only meet in the cinema. You cannot discuss together.
Husband and wife would never go to
Repeat
Battle of
the
Armageddon.
game. Go to cinema every month.
Yes. Yes. So now we will talk a little bit more about solution concepts. This is, as we said before, what is a good result of a game? It's difficult to say, and we will look at possible ways of defining what is the, as it says here, how to define if outcome is good or bad. The problems are that, as we said before, even in one particular game, in this prisoner's dilemma, depending on how do you look at it, you can prefer CC or DD as a good result. Why it happens? Because utilities, as we said before, are not always comparable. If it's money, then you can say it's comparable, but also not necessarily 10 euro for one person and another person is not necessarily the same. And we don't have more important and less important agents. Normally they are all the same. What should I do as a single person or as a single player is difficult to define because it really depends a lot on what others are doing. And this is why we have several ways of defining what is a result or optimal result of a game. We will talk about these four things. best response, dominant strategy, Pareto, optimality, and Nash equilibrium. Probably the last one is the most famous one, and to make it a little bit more interesting, also we'll show at this place a movie piece, the famous one.
I might get them.
Yeah, you can choose which one.
On follow Chelsea.
Let's see if it works. Do we have sound? Do we have sound?
Doesn't work.
Yeah, you might want to stop shuffling your papers for 5 seconds.
So let's wait. You probably know the film. It got Oscar, I think. This is The Beautiful Mind, yes? And this is the story of John Nash, who got Nobel Prize basically 40 years later after he described his Nash equilibrium as his, basically it was his PhD thesis, yes. And this is probably how it happens.
Incoming, gentlemen. Deep breaths. Yes, you might want to stop shuffling your papers for 5 seconds.
I will not buy you gentlemen beer.
No, we're not here for beer, my friend.
Well, anyone else feel she should be moving in slow motion?
Was she want a large wedding, you think? Should we say swords, gentlemen? Pistols at dawn.
Have you remembered nothing? Recall the lessons of Adam Smith, father of modern economics.
In competition, individual ambition serves the common good.
Exactly.
Every man for himself, gentlemen.
And those who strike out are stuck with their friends. I'm not going to strike out.
You can lead a blonde to water, but you can't make her drink.
I don't think you said that.
All right, nobody move. She's looking over now. Right, she's looking at Nash.
All right, he may have the upper hand now, but wait until he opens his mouth. Remember the last time?
Oh, yes, that was in the history book.
Adam Smith needs revision.
What are you talking about?
If we all go for the blonde, we block each other. Not a single one of us is going to get her. So then we go for her friends. But they will all give us the cold shoulder because nobody likes to be second choice. Well, what if no one goes for the blonde? We don't get in each other's way. And we don't insult the other girls. That's the only way we win. That's the only way we all get laid. Adam Smith said, best result comes from everyone in the group doing what's best for himself, right? That's what he said. That's right. Incomplete. Incomplete. Okay. Because the best result would come from everyone in the group doing what's best for himself and the group.
This is some way for you to get the blonde on your own. You can go to hell. Governing dynamics, gentlemen. Governing dynamics. Adam Smith. What's wrong with you?
Here we go. Careful.
Thank you.
So what he says, Adam Smith was, when Adam Smith needs revision, Adam Smith was wrong. Adam Smith, it was 18th century, he published basically very important results where he said, he defined invisible hand of the market, where he said, if every agent does the best for himself, eventually it will lead to the optimal result for everyone. And this was basically for 200 years the standard, and the Nash said, maybe it's not true, yes? And he said that sometimes you have to deviate from this. Basically, the prisoner's dilemma is also something which illustrates it, but it wasn't formalized until then. And to formalize this a little bit, we define first the best response of an agent, intuitively very simple. It's if I would know what everyone is doing, then I would do this. Yes. So if I would know everyone from A1 without me, I'm agent E. from A1 to AN without me did something, then I would choose something, and this would be my best response. And what Nash said, that there is a setup where everyone does his best response. And in this case, he proved a lot of important things. In this case, obviously, no one wants to change unilaterally. So because you play your best response, you don't want to change if no one else changes. The same way, if you are not in the Nash equilibrium, then someone will always want to change. And what is very important, he proved that such equilibrium always exists. Yes, but it's not necessarily pure strategy. It's mixed strategy. We will understand later what does it mean. And he also proved, this is more like, he proved that if we have a repeated game, then after some time the solution will converge to a Nash equilibrium. So these are basically where he got his Nobel Prize for. He proved that this solution always exists and that we always deviate, we always move towards this solution. This is Nash equilibrium, what it is clear. In our game here, husband and wife, we have two Nash equilibrium. Yeah, so both go to the same cinema. If they met, then no one would want to deviate alone. Yes, because then they would land either here or here. Not interesting. Interestingly, this is not the only two equilibria. There is also one more with mixed strategy. Why is it important? Because even this result that these are two Nash equilibria is interesting, but still doesn't help me, because I still don't know where should I go today in the evening if I have to choose, and I don't know what my wife is doing. Good. Nash equilibrium always exists, but there are also other concepts, and one of them, very important one, dominant strategy. So
I did not understand the last line which you mentioned, where you said that if you repeat the games again and again, you would converge to a Nash equilibrium.
Yes.
It's because your wife picks the movie.
Yes, so it's about, in a repetitive game, we can expect that we will land in a Nash equilibrium.
Does it work for cinema example? Yeah, I mean, even in the example in the movie, yes, in the small clip that you showed, how do you think that if they have the repeated experience of picking the girls, and they would finally end up leaving the blonde?
Yes.
Would that happen, and how would you predict that's happening?
Well, how? This is...
No, I mean, so based on Nash equilibrium, if they repeat it again and again and again, towards the end, they would find themselves not picking the blonde, all of them. Yeah, and that's when they would converge towards Nash equilibrium. Yeah, otherwise
they decided not to compete. Their decision was not to compete. Like, blonde is just to make it more plakative, but they decided not to compete. Two guys should never go to one girl. This is their decision. Yes.
And if you look at it, immediately the other guy contradicted him, saying that, oh, you are reserving the blonde for yourself.
Yes.
And this thought might just stay.
That's true, but I mean, I would formulate their decision was don't compete. Yes. This is their strategy. Yes. They could, if one person goes to blonde, that would work as well. Their decision was not to compete. This was their strategy.
But probably the question would be where comes the expectation from? So is it that I could imagine you could not mathematically prove it, but maybe it's the result of measures. So like when you did this experiment repeatedly, and most groups then they converged to the Nash equilibrium? Or
So
is there something
you can
more that
prove it
makes...
mathematically. The question is like, how you can prove it. Yes.
So if you take the example of Coca-Cola and Pepsi there, yes, they have been here for years, and they have been launching new products every day.
Yes.
And they are still competing.
Yes.
And there was no way that they have, over the years, reached a Nash equilibrium or even converged to a Nash equilibrium.
You forget
this is actually, in this case, both
are governed by the
creating you in the let's.
There's a third agent.
In the prisoner's dilemma, this right bottom corner is the Nash equilibrium, because this is what you want to do. Yes, this is even more strong. This is a dominant strategy. So it is a Nash equilibrium. In this case, it works because you are afraid of losing more than you want to earn something. This is very mathematical. It's not very intuitive. So you can prove that it's the case. Like if you calculate expected value in indefinite number of games. Yes.
First, we need to model repeated games. Does it mean that the agents have memory for previous experience?
You just say, what is my limit when n goes to indefinite? What is my expected value? But I think it will get. What I wanted to say with this last line also, yes, we will talk about it later. We know that these are two equilibria, yes? But I want to choose today where to go. What should I do? Should I choose this one? Should I choose this one? Yes? Should I choose them 50-50%? Or like, what should I do? We need instructions, which I can act upon. And this is what we'll try to do.
Pasha, you just said that kind of two participants don't know about each other and don't know about their decisions. But from another side, from the movie, they just agreed that they will have to do a kind of win-win position and don't select the blonde. So do you kind of, is it suppose that they don't know what other participants are doing or not in this game?
You don't, in general case, you don't know what other person is doing. So dominant strategy is a case where, why is it interesting? Because in a Nash equilibrium, I'm thinking what other players are doing, and it's only stable if other participants also don't change their behavior. If they decide to deviate, then for me, it makes sense also maybe to deviate. Yes. Dominant strategy is the case where I have some action, or I have some point, some utility, and it's better than some other case where independently of all other players are doing. So that means I can choose my actions without thinking, without knowing what other players are doing, and it will always be the best for myself. As I said, for Nash equilibrium, it's not true. Yes. Why is it so important? Because normally if you try to understand what other players are doing, you need to spend time, you need to spend money, you need to spend maybe sometimes criminal energy. This is a lot of, and you can get wrong. Yes. So if the best thing which you can do, this is also because of this in mechanism design, if I create a game, if I create the rules, I try to create a game with dominant strategy if I want to enforce some results. Then I can.
And this is true for one particular agent and not all the agents.
For all. If every agent has this dominant strategy, then we have a dominant equilibrium, dominant strategy equilibrium, where everyone plays his optimal strategy. The problem is it doesn't always exist. Nash always exists. This thing not always exists. We'll see on examples. Like we'll see a couple of examples. But the notion is, I hope, clear. So if every agent can just do something without thinking of other players, then I have dominant strategy. Very nice, because it makes my task much easier. And another point which we talk when we try to compare results of the game and see what is good, what is not good, is a social choice. This is where we try to think about results of the game from outside, where we have some regulator like government, and we say what is a good result. So we talked before, utility is not transferable between agents. We cannot type 5 from one and give 5 to another. Not always works. This is why in general case the definition is very, very also very simple. We say Pareto optimal is a point where we cannot make one agent better without making other agents worse. So if we want to make one guy better, we have to make make someone else worse. Yes. So without trying to compare one, if you make one agent 1 point worse and another 100 points better, we cannot do it. We cannot get anyone worse without getting someone else better.
Coming back to the movie, if they all get laid, that's Pareto optimum.
This is...
No.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe if you say I could move one to the blonde, then he's better, and the rest tells the same, then maybe it's better. So you have to define the rules much better in this case. But
they're all drunk to the extent they don't care who they're linked by.
Yeah, then it would be the example. Okay. The same as with the Nash, at least one Pareto optimal must exist, and it's not unique. If we can make utility transferable, this is if we talk about like social system in a state, yes? This is where we have money, we can distribute the money, and there are several, like a lot of approaches are possible. One of them is very simple. We just add payoffs of all agents, and we say the more the better, yes? And another one, which is called Rawlsian welfare function, there was like a US philosopher who defined it. He says we should maximize the minimum. We should find, this is basically what is behind the social system, the social welfare. We take the person who is the poorest and we try to make him not that poor. Yes? So we maximize the minimum. Other things also possible. This is just two examples of how we do this. Yes? Not important is just calculating maximum, like the sum of all of them is not always the best.
And when you compare Nash to Pareto optimum, so where do they deviate?
Let's see examples. So examples will come later, but if you think about prisoner's dilemma, Nash is where both sit in prison for 6 years, where both deviate, basically defect. Pareto optimum is where they both keep silent. Yes, so they're not, because you can make both of them better by moving them to both keep silent. Pareto optimum is where both keep silence. So they're not the same. Good. So now we come to this question: what should I do in this case? I'm a husband. I want to go to the cinema. What should I do? And we can now, with the instruments which we have, we can calculate what should I do. I say, I assume my wife will go with probability P to the Battle of Armageddon, and like with probability 1 minus P to the Flower Child. Just, it doesn't matter. I don't know the P now, but there is this P. For me, my logic is the following. As a husband, if I would know that one of these alternatives is better for me, then I would always choose one, like the one which is better. That means that in my world, these two alternatives should be equal. And my payoff in the case where I go to Battle of Armageddon and my payoff in the case where I go to Flower Child should be the same. Otherwise, I would choose the one which is better. And I can put it into numbers. If I go to Battle of Armageddon, then my wife is there as a probability of P. So as probability of P, I get 2. And I get 0 with probability 1 minus P because she went to another film. And this is here. And if I solve it, I get P is 1/3. That means that my wife will go with probability 1/3 to the Battle of Armageddon. If I solve it the other way around, I will know that my probability of going to Battle of Armageddon should be 2/3. And this is another Nash equilibrium with mixed strategies. That means before if we have this Nash equilibrium, this is poor strategies where it's 100% for the husband, it's 100% B, 0% F. Yes, this is Nash equilibrium with mixed strategies where I, as a husband, play with 2/3 probability B and 1/3 probability F, and this is a Nash equilibrium, and this I can use. I can throw a coin 3 times, I don't know. And I should choose with probability 2/3 B and with probability 1/3 F. and go there. And if I assume that my wife is a rational agent, and
Applying the same math.
yes,
Okay.
she has to win. This is proven. Then, if we both play this strategy, then we will maximize over either over many repetitions, or if there is only one instance, like it says here, we have one sample, but I don't have any more information about previous behavior or next behavior, then this is what I should do, and this is maximize my expected rate. So this is important result of the game theory. It tells me what to do in this situation, which is otherwise not so clear.
Good. At each instance, I'm assuming that I don't have knowledge of the previous one.
Yes. I mean, if it gets repetitive, then it will get different. In the general case, you will do the same. But of course, if you know that every Tuesday your wife goes to Flower Child, then you will start. But this is already much more complex scenario. Let's look now. We asked some questions. Let's look at prisoner's dilemma. D is the dominant strategy. Like playing D is always better, and that means that DD is the dominant strategy equilibrium. So without thinking what other person is doing, I should play D. Of course, it's also a Nash equilibrium. So if we have a dominant strategy equilibrium, then this thing also is the only Nash equilibrium, but it's asked, it's not Pareto optimal, because by moving from here to here, I make everyone better. And the important lesson here is that individual incentive and overall welfare do not coincide. We have to sometimes we have to, this is basically what in the film John Nash was saying, that if you just let the market play, it's not necessarily will create result which is optimal for everyone. Another interesting example is head and tails. We drop a coin, if two times, if the results are the same, head, head, then the red, or tails, tails, then the red player wins. If results are different, then the blue player wins. Another maybe more interesting interpretation is goalie keeper. It's like the goalie shoots like 11-meter penalty, and the keeper jumps into one side. So the goalie chooses left to right, and the keeper chooses left to right.
So goalie and keeper is the same thing.
Yes?
Striker.
Striker, okay. Striker. So if they choose the same side, then the keeper wins. If they choose different sides, then the striker wins. There is no pure strategy Nash equilibrium. Interesting, yes? So whichever cell you take, if you take this one, then the blue will want to deviate. If you take this one, then the red will want to deviate. So if I shoot and I shoot left, and the goalie and the keeper jumps right, he wants to choose the other side. But if he also jumps left, then I would want to choose the other side if I would know. There is no pure strategy equilibrium, but according to the Nash, there is a mixed strategy equilibrium which has 50%. It's also intuitively clear, because if I would know that the keeper in 60% of the cases jumps right, then I would kick right. So this is, in this case, the Nash equilibrium is decide 50-50 what to do. Interestingly, this thing was analyzed. Some guys took, I don't know the names, they took some keeper and several guys who were kicking the penalties, and they calculated it was not 50-50, because the guy who was kicking was less accurate on one side, and the keeper was less accurate on the other side. But they really showed on examples that they really converge to a Nash equilibrium.
With the same pair of people?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
100 times or so.
Good. Okay, and this is example which we just had, which we already explained, yes, with the mixed strategy Nash equilibrium. Just one more example which we can discuss and see how can we reason about games as well. We have two companies which currently share the market as 16 to 12, and this is 28. It's like overall size of the market. This is how much the people pay. I don't know. You see a lot of such markets if you talk about mobile communication, for example, there is a rule that one person pays that much in month for the mobile communication, and you cannot change it a lot. You can increase the amount of services which you get, but still you will get out of him, I don't know, 30 euros per month, something like this in average. So market is fixed, and two companies split the market like this. Now the decision is advertise or not advertise. So if you advertise, you pay 8 for advertisement, and if you advertise, then you get 3/4 of the market. Yes, that would be 21 minus 8, which you have to pay for advertisements. You would get 13. So if red advertises, it gets 13, and the blue gets the rest. And here is symmetrical. If both advertise, then they split the market 50-50, but both pays for the advertisement. Yes. So what do we see here? We see that company 1, the red one, has dominant strategy, not advertise. Why? Because 16 is better than 13, and 7 is better than 6. Yes. So independently of what blue is doing, I will choose not to advertise. This is my dominant strategy. My decision is very easy. Now, for company 2, it doesn't have a dominant strategy because I compare 12 and 13. 13 is better, but here 7 is better than 6. So I have to choose between this. But since I assume that the red one will choose not advertise as a rational agent, so we'll be in the upper part, I say then I should advertise because I will get 13 and it's better than 12. Yes. So not advertise, advertise. This thing is a Nash equilibrium. There is no dominant strategy, but no dominant equilibrium, but there is dominant strategy for one player.
Also for the second, right?
For the second, no, because if
it's also dominant for him, it's very clear for him. He would always advertise.
No, because if I don't believe that the red is rational, or for whatever reason I have some information that he chooses to advertise, then I would choose not advertise. Yes, because I would get 7 in this case, better than this 6. So for the red, this is the difference. For the red player, the upper row is always better than the lower row. Yes. For the blue one, I compare 2 columns. This here, the right column is better, but here left column is better. So this is where, as a blue player, I would have to, if I believe that the red one is rational, then I would do one thing. If not, if I believe he's like 50-50, or this is where it gets complex. Yeah, I have to invest into, this is why dominant strategy is so nice. I don't have to think about the other guy at all. But there I would try to collect information about his sales. I would try to bribe him. I would try to, I don't know what, to find out what he will do.
What would be the example of dominant equilibrium if we have compare, like if blue one had no winning if he, irrespective, so he has the same logic, advertise, right?
I mean, if we write here 5,
and he will always advertise.
And
right?
he will always advertise.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this would be also dominant equilibrium and the Nash equilibrium as
well. Dominant, no, because for red, dominant is not advertised. So if you write here 14, then this will be dominant strategy. But if we write here 5, then there will be no dominant strategy at all. Because they don't hit the same. Good. I think I come to the last slide, and this is just some notes about practical applicability of game theory, and in particular about calculating Nash equilibrium. So Nash equilibrium, calculating of a Nash equilibrium is a central question because we know it always exists, and we know if we find it, then we can answer some interesting questions. Unfortunately, in a general case, it's let's say it's NP complete, not proven, but very likely. So it's very complex. With growing number of actors and possible actions, it's it becomes untraceable very fast. And other interesting questions which game theory can, which you can ask in the context of game theory, you can ask if there is a unique equilibrium, yes or no. We saw cases when there are several, and really this is where game theory hits also some problems. If there are many equilibria, you don't know which one to choose. You have to guess. If there is Pareto optimal Nash equilibrium, yes or no? We saw cases then when they coincide, when they don't coincide. So depending of how do we define social welfare, it can be interesting to find a game where if people, like if agents per se individual rationality, then they will also find out global optimum. Would be nice. Yes. We can ask if there is a equilibrium where player has payoff at least that much, or if sum of all payments is at least as much. Important for making sure. Sometimes we want to make sure that everyone gets at least something. This is where we are here. And then another interesting question is if there is an equilibrium where a particular agent plays or doesn't play one action. Yes? So if you want to make sure that one player doesn't come to an idea to do something, you want to check whether this is interesting in some situation, interesting action for him, yes or no. And generally, these questions are very computationally intensive. Good. I think I have to.
But let's say, given sort of a set of assumptions or information, you could model those.
You can answer these questions, but it will. You might. If you
well, you said
agents,
in a general case, it's
yes.
possible, of course. But if you have a given problem with set parameters,
it means that if you have agents which can choose out of 100 different alternatives, then it can take too much time to calculate. Yeah. But can be possible. It's like in many cases it's still possible because there are a lot of shortcuts which you can apply in order to reduce this complexity.
Like to fit real situations to any of this mathematical model, you should simplify a lot of stuff. And I have a feeling that without simplification, will be just the task will be just overcomplicated, and probably price for solving without simplification will be too high.
Are there any like examples where you will be satisfied with the first best solution of this NP complete and not solve everything, or it would be not Nash equilibrium and you want to be satisfied?
Well, this is again probably you will ask this question. If I find an equilibrium where my payoff is at least 100, will I search for the next one? Maybe no.
So if you find a problem to be NP complete, you would find ways to make it more heuristic and define assumptions where you would want to make it solvable.
It's as with many NP complete problems, if you know some system, then it gets simpler. For example, we said that we in general case only this mixed strategy Nash equilibrium exists. There is a notion of support for a strategy. That means if I have 100 actions possible, but I know that in my Nash equilibrium I have only 10 which I play with a probability more than 0. So if I know this support, then it also gets simpler. So there are many shortcuts which you can apply to make it simpler. So what do I have to do? Just a moment. In the next session, as I said before, we will talk about things, why votings are so complex, why voting. Then, in which scenarios game theory doesn't work. So we saw one indication it sometimes has problems, and it's really interesting to discuss these cases. And another thing which also goes hand in hand with this rationality and what motivates agents to do some decisions or not to do some decisions. So, and I have to thank Miriam for being the test person for the presentation. Good. More questions? Good. Thank you very much.